Congressman Paul joins us on the phone, and nice to have you back on Talk of the Nation.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
And you've defined your campaign as being the candidate who wants to most limit the role of the federal government. You represent a coastal congressional district in Texas, yet you've consistently argued that we should slash FEMA, the federal agency responsible for responding to disasters in the aftermath of a hurricane. You've repeated that.
Yes, I just think it is a serious problem, and that's why I don't think we should let it be dealt with by bureaucrats in Washington, because they don't have a very good record. A lot of people would like to paint myself with a brush that says that if you don't want the federal government to do it, you don't want to solve the problem. But sometimes, when the federal government gets involved, they don't do a very good job, and that is my point. Matter of fact, the federal government invites more problem by offering what they call insurance, but against flooding and wind. But the truth is it's no longer insurance if the government says they're always going to bail you out. So people who enjoy the benefits of living on the beach and close to the water really are guaranteed that their houses will be rebuilt. And they say, well, we can't get insurance otherwise. Well, they can't get it because it's real expensive because it's very dangerous. So it's a matter of risk, and I think that's an objection that I've had. And besides, I've had more complaints about FEMA than any other agency the whole time I've been in Congress, and I have a coastal district. And there's too many stories about what FEMA did down in with Katrina. So there's so many arguments that's not the most efficient way to deal with a problem like natural disasters.
Well, if FEMA does not provide disaster relief, who should?
Well, who's FEMA? FEMA's the taxpayers and its debt. They're $20 billion in debt already. I think the states should do it. When Katrina was such a disaster, there were a lot of complaints that the guard units for the states that were involved, many of their guard people were overseas, worrying about war disasters. Matter of fact, I think it would be better if they were home worrying about our kind of problems here at home. But I'd also bring some of the money home. See, I'm not opposed under the conditions, because I was opposed to the concept even when it was imposed on us by an executive order, not by the Congress, but by executive order. But I've always said that, once we get involved in a program, you just don't walk away from it if you can come up with another way of dealing with it. But we don't have any money. We have to borrow the money, and we're just kidding ourselves, and I consider the fiscal mess we're in to be very, very serious. So what I have said is, why don't we cut $10 billion a month out of the war going on over in Afghanistan, which is a total disaster, put half of that toward the deficit, and put half of it back into our infrastructure or for the needs of the people we have taught to be dependent, and actually try to work our way out of this. So I think that approach is a very responsible way of trying to deal with both the crisis as well as our financial mess that we're in.
And I don't know if you heard the news today, but President Obama has asked to address a joint meeting of Congress on the evening of September 7th, which is coincidentally, according to the White House, happens to be the date of the next GOP presidential debate. Which event do you plan to attend?
I hadn't thought much about it, because I guess I heard about that just a few minutes ago. But I sort of, I just wonder about motivations, because in the Republican primary, there were people who always tried to upstage the other members. We had Perry doing something when we had the straw vote, and then we have Palin doing things in order to get attention. So I don't know. I just wonder about the motivation of all this to pick. It's very obvious that he's picking at a time when a debate is going on. Why didn't he do it on Tuesday? So I have no idea what the answer to that, but it seems a little bit unusual to do something like that.
Ken?
Congressman, the headline about a month ago or so was that Michelle Bachmann wins the Iowa straw poll with very little mention that Ron Paul finished closely behind her, and the other headline was that Tim Pawlenty drops out of the race. Then the more recent headline was that Rick Perry is taking over Mitt Romney's role as frontrunner. As a member of Congress from Texas, you've obviously had some dealings with Rick Perry, and of course we'll see Perry in the debate next week. But what's your sense of what's your relationship with Rick Perry, and how do you see him as a presidential candidate?
Well, I think he's a formidable candidate. I mean, he's the governor of a big state. I don't agree with his politics. The Tea Party people had a candidate running against him for governor, last go-around, and she had no money and got 20%. But I haven't met the governor, and I don't know him personally, and we haven't had any personal dealings, so I can't comment on that. But I know that so many of his political positions are not the same as mine.
Could you point out one or two?
Well, politically speaking, I mean, he was a chairman here in Texas for Al Gore's campaign in '88, and he was for compelling, 12-year-old, 10-year-old girls all to get inoculations for HPV, and he did that by executive order. I don't believe in executive orders, and that was overridden by the legislature. And there are quite a few other things in his past that philosophically I wouldn't agree with. His comments on foreign policy haven't been exactly what I would like.
Well, let's get some callers in on the conversation. We're speaking, of course, with the presidential candidate, Ron Paul, a congressman from Texas, and 800-989-8255, email talk@npr.org. Josh is on the line from Milwaukee.
Hey, Congressman. Hey, Neil. I just had a quick question. Do you feel at all vindicated in the wake of your last campaign that maybe you saw the debt crisis coming from a mile away and that maybe you deserved a little more platform for speaking in the last election? And I'll take my answer off the air.
Thanks, Josh.
Well, I've never thought, I get that question asked a lot, and I never, put it in personal terms, because I think the views that I've expressed are vindicated. I think Austrian economics has been vindicated, something that I have followed since the 1960s, because it was the Austrian economists that predicted that the Bretton Woods agreement, the monetary system, the gold standard, would break down, which it did in August of 1971. So, yes, if you understand Austrian economics, you can anticipate bubbles. You can't tell when the crisis actually will hit, because there's other things that determine the precise timing. But we do know that if you run up debt and print money, that the dollar will lose value and it will wipe out the middle class eventually. And that is what I fear we're facing. That's why I'm such so determined to try to pay for the things that we do, whether it's war or whatever. Of course, I don't want the war to go on, because I think they're also unnecessary. So, yes, I think the philosophy of liberty in the Constitution hopefully has been vindicated to some degree, because it was the prediction